Welcome to Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you are looking for an interesting commercial, marketing, and sales podcast that is bold, unfiltered, unconventional, and authentic, you are at the right place. Curious how to play the game better and smarter? We will share how we crack the code to hyper growth for our customers. We will invite amazing people. We will share our experience, the first attempts in learning, cracking the code, and finally the results. And last but not least, we will give you food for thought. Now, let's get started.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the podcast of Serving Your Market as a King or Queen. And today we welcome Alexander. Hi, Alex.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Good as well. Thanks a lot. So, Liesbeth, we know Alexander, I think, for a long time, right? So, we work together for the same company, basically. So, again, welcome to our podcast, Alex. It's great to have you in. And could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me. So for the people who don't know me, my name is Alexander Lechthaler. I'm currently the sales director of Proact Netherlands, which is an IT services company with around 300 people in the Netherlands. And within there, I'm leading the sales team, which consists of around 12 sales in the field.
Cool. So, I'm looking forward to the conversation, and let's go into the promise actually of this podcast. So what we will be talking about today is staying relevant as a sales while the rules are changing. So exciting stuff will be covered as what types of success you're going to take, what are the growth options, and transformation is also an important topic here. Before we start, actually, we have a little bit of tradition, obviously. So every episode we have a drink with our guest. So Alex, what are you having today?
Of course, I'm having a white wine, and not just a white wine. I think I also make the joke when I was with you guys that you can see at the cap of a bottle of wine if it's a good wine, and that's namely if there is the Austrian flag on it, because I myself am from Austria, so you can only get Austrian red wine when you're at home with me, and I only gift Austrian red wine. So that's what I'm having. So, of course, a grüner Veltliner, as we say.
Cool. Nice. Right. And how about you, Liesbeth?
Yeah. Actually, that was the first wine I had when we were launching our podcast, by the way. But no, today I'm having a Sauvignon Blanc from Chile. So cheers. And you, yes. Jeroen?
Yeah, I'm having it's called a Trotse Pauw. It's a beer from Rotterdam. And of course, the city where you live, Alexander. So I picked that one, handpicked this one actually today in the shop. And
I'm honored.
Yeah, because I think, right, it's doing transformations, right, and becoming better every day and staying relevant in the game. That comes also with successes, right, and first attempt in learnings and so on. But what I always learned from you, right? Also, there's also moments in time you need to be proud, right, of your team. So therefore, I admire that in you, and therefore I hand selected the Trotse Pauw. So
thanks. Cheers to that.
Let's go.
Oh,
okay, so
cheers. Yes, looking forward to this podcast. So it's for me to kick off, actually, Alex. That I remember one time. That you were mentioning, or at least a quote about eating soup with a fork. Sorry for the ones who are not Dutch. It's probably very English. But it was about, to give some context around that, that was about that you can't approach a project sales the same, actually, for as it is a services deal. So can you explain a little bit more about what you mean with that and why you have to take a different approach when actually selling a different product or service?
Yeah, I remember when I used that quote, and it took me some time to even realize it myself. And perhaps a little anecdote on how I learned it myself. When I joined the company where you guys also were working, I don't know if you remember, but back then I was a techie. Basically, I was a technical consultant. No. I'm an electrotechnical engineer myself, a Bachelor of Science in that. So I had no sales experience whatsoever, but I knew one thing that I wanted to learn. I always said I was the accidental sales. So I sold things, but I didn't know why. So I wanted to learn that, and that's why that was the mission that I agreed back then, now 10 years ago almost. And I came basically in this whole sales world where I saw two things. One thing was that there was a lot of success, but there was also a lot of, let's say, healthy competition internally where I had to cope with. And the second thing is that the whole IT market was transforming from project deals to services deals, or from one-time projects to recurring revenue. So back then I made, I think, one of the best decisions I could have made back then. And it is that I would only focus on recurring revenue deals, because I had to learn the sales anyway. And I thought everyone is trying to get on the recurring revenue side. So let me just learn that first, and then I'll do the projects basically on the side. And one of the first things I learned was indeed that it is a whole different sales cycle, because where you have a project, you also provide value at once. So you're very focused on that one point where you provide your value, and then you can do the deal. But if you have recurring revenue, you must also have recurring value. So what is the value you're going to provide the customer, not only now, but also in the whole transformation of the customer, and in the whole execution of the contract. And that's why I came up with that quote that they said, well, we are very good at eating with forks, but we now have to learn to eat with a spoon, basically, because this is a whole different soup.
So actually, this is more kind of a strategic selling, you would say? Adding value, because what you were mentioning, it's not only about adding value, getting it signed up, the promise, but also adding value along the contract, and hopefully very long after that.
Yeah, I think in a way you are right. And that's not because the deal is different, but it's much easier to focus on one point in time where you provide value, because then you can basically make a whole very easy business case. But if you have recurring value, because you want recurring revenue, then you must also focus on long-term effects of the service you are providing. And then you become much more a strategic partner for the customer. So I think on that point, you're right. The reason why I'm down is because in the end, it's still a sales cycle. So every rule that is like soup is also a dish, every rule applies to it, but there are some extra rules or extra things you have to take in consideration.
Nice. I like it. I still remember the moment when you presented it also on one of the kickoffs. I think it was in 2019 or so, 2018. So I think that explains it very much. It's about delivering that incremental value, right? So I think one of the things also you've experienced, right, when we work together, the transformation from lead generation to demand generation to a far much more focused approach, right, where with ideal customer profile. What would you say did that bring to your team over that period, that transformation?
If I would describe it, I would describe it as shortly as peace of mind. It really made the life of some people much easier. And to elaborate on that, if you, I think I also said it once to you guys, I don't know, but it doesn't matter in which company you're in, you can basically summarize every company into one person, and the one person does everything. Then it does the whole marketing, sales, lead gen, everything up to order processing, and the whole delivery that can be done by one person. The ZZP we call in the Netherlands. And as soon as that starts to grow, then the first thing that you divide sales, sales, marketing, and operations. You basically have the technical or the know-how guy and the guys who know how to sell it. And if it grows, then most of the time it grows at the operational side and not at first at the sales side. And it takes some time and some leverage before you hire then also someone dedicated on marketing. That's basically how a lot goes in the IT market. And that brings some kind of focus. Now, in the end, you're all doing the same thing, and it's basically trying to find customers where you can have a relevant story and provide them with value so you can invoice them. That's the whole basic principle of sales. And the only enemy you have as a sales is time, because in the end, if you are a listed company or not, if you're working as an entrepreneur or as an employee, it doesn't matter. In the end, we all have the same finite amount of time. So the more effective you can be in that finite amount of time, more successful you're going to be, and the easier you're going to reach goals. Now, that being said, if you use all your time just on shooting in the wild and basically shooting with hail, which we all have done who is in a commercial role, because that's basically the most easy thing to do, then you see how inefficient it is. So it's quite interesting to focus on, okay, what now is working and what is not in the field. Or basically, and it gets much easier, because I can tell it's very easy now, but I think you know now at first hand how hard it is in the beginning to find the right customers and the right proposition and so basically you shoot on everything that moves, and as soon as the wheel gets spinning, then you get more insights on, oh, this is working and this is not, and you come to something like an ideal customer profile. And when you got that, then it basically means that you get 2x, 5x, perhaps even 10x more effectiveness on your time. And that is the thing that has brought it to, in all honesty, to some of the people in my sales team. Because there are some people who, it's quite scary, right? Because you all have a number on your head, which you need to get. And it's basically a whole new approach on reaching your budget and reaching your target. So you have to understand it and believe in it before you take the jump. So some of them did quite successful. Some of them did half successfully, and some of them basically had their revenue machines running, so they keep their revenue machines running. It's basically on I don't make it mandatory within the team. I just reach it out as a principle that works, and what we've seen from results also when we work together, it's quite effective, and it basically makes sure that you spend your time quite well.
Yeah, and what you were saying, like taking the jump, it's also maybe a little bit getting out of your comfort zone, because Absolutely. If you take a whole different approach, it asks focus, dedication to make it a success and make it work. Of course, next to the belief where you're talking about, because that's absolutely the case. But what you're saying, if it's up to 10 times a win in time, I would say what's not to like, but it always costs time to kind of investing in that new approach.
Yeah, but I think that's a very good point you touch here, because what would be the reason that you don't do it? I think there are basically two reasons why people won't do it, or even we don't do it in full. And that is, one, there are some, let's say, principles that have been working for years now, and we expect it to work for at least quite some time yet. So basically, don't throw out your old shoes as long you don't have new ones. So it's also a perfect principle to set up aside your current sales model. And the second thing, and that's the hardest thing, but it becomes more easier the more you are consistent in logging your results, and it is what are your ICP criteria? And if you define your ICP criteria now, based on the past results, are those also the ICP criteria that you want to use in the future to realize your strategy? And those are things that aren't. It's very dangerous to see sales as a science, because in the end we can model it around, let's say 80%, but in those last 20%, you can still lose every deal. So it's very dangerous to do that. But everything you do to move, to basically eliminate all the ways that don't work, which you do basically with ICP, you can, for example, say my ICP criteria is at least X and Y numbers of employees. Then you already eliminate a lot of time wasted, because that's basically what you do. And the more relevant criteria you have, the more successful you are going to be. But to define them, that's quite hard, and only I would say it's 50% based on past results and 50% based on trial and error.
That's
yeah,
true.
I like that approach. And also I think what you mentioned around the 80-20, right? I think maybe even bringing a new rule to the game, right? I think we are all familiar with the 80-20 rule from a revenue perspective, right? But I think this one as well, right? I think there's a certain element of science, right? To help the sales become more effective, as you said, right? But there's always a 20% human element in it, right? And I think balancing that, I would say, could that almost be a new rule of the game? I think I would almost would say it's a law, not only a rule, but it will be the law that you can model around 80%, but 20% is still just the human touch. And I always live with the principle that a customer is going to buy from you when they absolutely love your company, they love your service or product, and they love or like you. So those three should be at least, let's say on a scale from 0 to 10, at least at an 8, and the higher the better. But if you don't have those things in place, then they don't going to buy from you. Now, as the product and service and the company are mostly what model, but person and how the customer likes you and basically wants to award you with the contract, that's all done by the human touch, basically. And as long as you aren't selling commodities, because commodities that's a whole different game. But as long as you're not selling commodities, then that human touch is at least as important as the other two.
Yes, and here it comes to relations and relationship building, and also when you're talking about contracts or recurring revenue, it's not only about the value from your service, your point of view, but as well as how you maintain your contact. And if are you only there to sign up the contract, or do you keep in contact on a regular basis, and that you build it up over time?
Yeah, that's something we also discussed once in a few weeks ago, that there are a lot of voices out there who are saying that the whole role of sales is changing, and that sales is an old profession and not relevant anymore. And in a way, it is changing, because the whole world is changing. So the customers are smarter than ever before, and there are a lot of things more transparent than ever before. But in the end, all the principles that most of those voices are referring to are principles that have never worked in the first place, or only work at a very, let's say, annoying salesman tactic. So I listen to quite a lot of audiobooks, and some of them go all the way back. They were even originally tapes, so around the 80s, 90s. And all the principles that are used there are still relevant nowadays, but you just have to translate them in the phases we are now. Because back then we didn't have social media, and back then we didn't have LinkedIn, or we didn't have video reference cases. But the whole concept the whole profession and the whole human touch still stays the same, which means people will only do business with people who they like and who they consider their friends.
Would you say then that if you look at the sales function and how it transforms over time, that it's more connected to how the market is changing and the digital era we're living in, because you have to adapt to that change anyhow. So you can't avoid a type of transformation to stay relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's the whole issue with the sales profession. And I say this as a salesman, and I think that now I'm thinking about it. It even is relevant for companies, but I think we all know that one sales guy that was very, very successful, and then all of a sudden the younger generation came and he basically became irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And that is because they found out a way to be successful. They milked it all the way to the end, which is perfectly fine, but did forget to find new ways to stay relevant for the customers. And in the meantime, perhaps the customers aren't changing a bit, but the customers' needs are changing a lot. If you look at the IT market where I am active, the questions that customers ask us nowadays are way more different than even 3 years ago. I think a lot also has to do with the whole pandemic where we're in now, but that really changes the way how customers want to fill in their needs and what their needs exactly are. I'm thinking of an example which makes it more clear. A great example is customers now want full flexibility, so they're not even ready to commit for a year in some cases. Mm-hmm. Where 3 years ago it was perfectly fine to commit for 3 and 5 years. Now we get more and more questions just to have a commit for shorter times, which I can understand, especially in some industries where a lot of uncertainties are. The only thing is, and that's also perfectly logical, flexibility costs money, so it comes with a premium. So then it's again what we talked about earlier, the strategic selling in recurring revenue. Then you have to discuss with the customer what is more valuable for the customer, more flexibility at a premium, or less flexibility but a lower the total cost. And those are things that you can play with on that basis.
But I think that's because of the trend of SaaS companies where you have that whole subscription model and you have that full flexibility.
Yeah. The funny thing, because it is absolutely something that comes over from the software world, because I was thinking a few days ago, I was thinking in the past, you probably also remember, I think your younger viewers won't remember, but in the past you would buy software, let's say a Windows license, and you really buy a box with a CD, and that was your Windows license. You can touch it and you can have it, and in your idea you bought one Windows license, and later on that came with the license codes, but you still had that paper which you have to have really careful, store really carefully, because that was the software you bought. And if you look nowadays, you basically buy a recurring license, especially for example, the Office licenses. You buy a recurring license, and you just have your login, and that's it. And the whole software world has changed quite soon to that, and now basically the whole hardware world is also changing around it, and even the services world is changing around it. So I think that's a great example of what I said earlier, that the whole customer demand is changing over time. So that also means that your relevance of yesterday as a salesperson is not the relevance of tomorrow, and you also have to change. I
think those worlds are really, really influencing each other, right? I think that I've spoken over the last couple of weeks also to different sales leaders in SaaS industry, and they have the need or the ambition, right, to have actually longer term contracts, right? Probably comes from the hardware and IT services side. So, but I think the critical point you elucidated here is it's all about the customer demand, right? And what they want, and how can we facilitate that, and we need to transform in our revenue streams and contract time and lengths and so on in order to fulfill that. And I think that comes very much to the forefront. So we talked a lot about the sales role, probably more in general, right, Alex? But how do you adopt specifically to change as a sales leader?
Yeah, changing
Tricky
as a
question. Pitfalls.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, changing as a salesperson is one thing, but changing as a sales leader is a whole other thing, because there are a lot of people who say, I'm perfectly fine as a sales. I never want to be a sales manager or a sales leader or a sales director. But in a way, I really enjoy it, of being responsible for the whole sales team. And I think it all comes down to creating the right environment for people to be successful. Like the example you had earlier about ICP. I don't force people to use it. We provide it. We provide all the insights. We help each other. But if they don't need it and they still reach their target, then there's absolutely no issue. But on the other hand, if you provide, this is just one example, things like this, and you don't reach your target, then we are going to have a whole another discussion, because then basically you're drowning, you got handed several hands, but in the end you didn't grab one of them because you're way too stubborn or more picky, or what you want to call it. But basically you need another type of leadership, where I really believe that sales leadership is not about the sticks, but all about the carrots. So don't force everyone into all the rules, but basically set the boundaries and make sure that everyone has the chance to reach their full potential, what's within them. And I think that's something that is also known, but I think the whole, let's say the whole tool sets you provide and the insights you provide, there you need to be continuously on top of what's new and what's working and what's not.
Alex, this is very much a culture also, or a trait at least, of first attempt in learning, right? Adopting new things, testing them out, and so on. Just being open to that, right? And also providing that to the team, if I understand you correctly, right?
Yeah, I can emphasize it with an example, which I think points out very well. And this is a real life example, not going into much detail, but this I think everyone can relate to. That is that we are working perfectly fine in a market. We're doing our thing. We see a transition in the market. We even are considered some of the leading companies in that field. So that's also very great. And all of a sudden, we see a train coming in from the left that we say, oh, hold on, this train is going really, really fast. And you see the first reaction of a lot of people is, the train is passing by and no one's even got bored to it. And as soon as it comes closer and closer, you really see that it's coming. Basically, in our case, I can even it are the hyperscalers. We're Sporect are a very specialist infrastructure and workspace company. We do a lot of managed services. We're considered leader there, but all of a sudden the hyperscalers come, and instead of fighting them, because we saw, like I said, they cannot grow if there isn't a need for it. So we can ignore that the customers are wanting it, but in the end, the customers do have need that the hyperscalers can fill in. So a few years ago, I saw that coming, and I thought, if we now going to start up projects to define all new things, that would take way too long and way too much energy. And one of the reasons why I like being sales is everything in the world starts with sales. Or turn it the other way around. Every company or even every initiative stops if you don't do sales. And sales is in the way of convincing the other party to make a choice that is better for the both of you. So that's basically the thing. That's why I also always say that the oldest profession in the world is sales. A lot of people think it's something else, but they only think about the delivery. And like I said earlier, it's sales and delivery in the same person. They first had to do the sell. Now you can fill in the gap.
Yeah.
So now I lost my point.
Yeah, but I'm laughing as well because in our preparation that we were talking about, you said it had the oldest profession in the world, but that started whole different in sales than the sales jobs we know nowadays. They still exist, by the way, but yeah.
But now I know where I was. Back to your question or to the example. So instead of fighting it and instead of doing a whole project team around it, I basically said to the sales of which I knew were capable of it, were most confronted with it, and also don't like regular business, but only like to do the beautiful deals. I just said to them, you know what? I don't know what our role is going to be in this field, but we will jump together and we build our wings on the way down. And that was for quite some years ago now. And of course, like the first attempt in learning, we had a lot of failures because there were really some times where it really, even though sometimes I thought, this wasn't a great idea. But again, now we have a leading position in this field where we can do, where we can provide the customer in their needs they have also in this space, and basically created a whole new services portfolio around it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sometimes you just need to fail to enter some markets. But the most important thing, and I know we already discussed it sometimes in the past, but I keep repeating it, is that you cannot go all in. So you have you running revenue streams. You even have your new revenue streams, and divide it up into the right proportions. Because only if there is a real chaos outside, or you are in a real escalation. But if all of a sudden you get competition where you never thought it was coming from, then you probably need to steer your whole company the all other direction. But to be honest, I haven't seen many companies in my life where they didn't already see it coming, where they didn't all see a competition coming from whatever it would be. If it could be a digital product, it could be a new resource that other companies had, which they didn't have. The legacy that they were keeping in mind. Almost always you already can see it coming, and there's still time to anticipate. And like I always said,
that's crucial what you're saying, the moment of anticipating.
Yeah, because a lot of times you would say, we should have done this 2 years ago. Okay, the best time was 2 years ago, but the second best time is today. So let's get started.
Yes,
I like that, and I think the way you explain it also, right? It's. I think it's way more trickier actually to do nothing, right? It's just setting I think everybody more or less knows the word pilot, right? But I think what we hear a lot also now is going into like a proof of value, right? It's just the hardest thing probably is when you're winning in your comfort zone, right? And then getting out of it, or at least a percentage of the company getting out of it, right? That's where you need to be brave, I guess, right? But like you said, if you wait too long, then the other train will come, right? It's all about painting the train while driving for yourself. Otherwise, you will lose out on that particular part in the market. And I think that's an interesting perspective you share there, and I think that's what if that's what sales leadership also is about, right? It's not only living in the moment, right, but also reassuring where the market is going and helping your team to to take that spot, right, or to go where the magic is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and that is, I think this is, also the great example of Who Ate My Cheese?
Yeah.
The book you love so much because of that power of adapting, the power of change, and being creative in, where the market is going, finding new ways, getting others with you on that journey.
Yeah, especially also that last one. You also mentioned it, but it's as a sales leader, my vision is you're only facilitator, and the whole sales team really knows earlier than you where the data is coming from. So they, by having the open discussions with them, and also sometimes the best ideas come from, especially the sales team, and of course they look at the sales leader to take the decision. But the input can come from everyone, even from an inside sales role or from telesales role, or it doesn't matter what. Everyone who has customer-facing roles can have the great idea of the great input to define it forward. So I think, as we are talking now, I think that is even one of the most important traits of a sales leader, to not only facilitate your team, but also to leverage them, basically to leverage their knowledge and leverage their insights, because they are very, very valuable.
Yeah, building a feedback loop. That's what we hear a lot, although it's sometimes hard. But we made a joke about that. I said, hey, you're actually truly a process man. And then you make the joke back of, yes, the truth is about being a fan of processes is because of.
Yeah, we talked about it because I'm very, very lazy.
No, and then I said, no, you like to play smart instead of hard. That's that was my response to it. Yeah, but that's I can imagine.
Right. I rather think about something 10% or 20% longer, and then think it out through, that we only have to think about it once, then every week have to make. So that's the reason why I'm considered a process man, but in the end I'm just very, very lazy and just want to think once about things every once in a while.
Good for you. Good for you. I can learn something from that. But now we talk about, facilitating your team and having the right processes in place, what I absolutely think is critical to success. But at the end, what is your spark, or what do you get out of bed for? You are doing it for quite a while now. What makes you happy in this job?
Well, I think several things. Beginning with the thing I just said earlier, I think I had many roles also at past positions, from basically very technical to architecture to project management to even was operation manager once. But in the end, I think that the sales profession is one of the most beautiful professions to have, because you have the ability to create something, the ability to, the customer has a need, he has a desire for gain or a fear of loss, and you can help him with that. And by that, it's also a very important thing for me, also have fun in the process, because we can work 24 hours a day if we want, but also our customers and of course our colleagues just want to have a laugh every now and then. But I think that is one very important component in my current job. The other one is that when I started at my current employer, I was employee number 19, and we are now 330 people only in the Netherlands. So it's also the impact on decisions, and therefore the positive impact you can have in people's lives is quite, and sometimes I think even unbelievable. That if you think about how many families you're feeding every month, in the end, that all has to come in via the sales machine. So I think that's also something that inspires me, that gives me even, I think, a sense of meaning. And the third one, I think, is especially the team I'm in. So we are, I think the sales team is now in one of the best shapes it ever has been in the past. And I see that it is very important to have a good and successful team, because in the end, I cannot do it all by myself, even not a little bit. I need to have everyone, and everyone has his role in it. And if that is all aligned, then it really gets me up in the morning and basically gets me up every day.
So
I really
proud
love
of your
that
team. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's proudness of your team, right? A proud peacock, as I'm drinking now.
Exactly.
I really like that, right? And I think that's what modern leadership is about, right? It's about serving your team, right? Creating that right environment where they can grow, develop, and happy, and how you elicitate now and share your beliefs on what you're proud of, right? I think that's I really like that, and love to hear that story from you again, Alex. So for me, I think this we couldn't end better than this. I would say, and again, I want to thank you very much for joining us in the conversation, Alex. And I think we learned a lot today. It's about staying relevant as a sales. Well, the rules are changing. We got some old rules dusted off, maybe. Yeah. I learned actually a couple of new rules as well, which I'm very happy that you shared those. And I'm going to see how I can implement them myself or help customers with it going forward. So again, thank you so much for being our guest, and I want to thank everybody for watching and listening.
Thanks for having me, and like I said, it was an honor. So thanks.
Thanks, Alex.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll catch you in the next episode.